So good afternoon and welcome to our department seminar here at the Varila University Department of Jewish Art. Today we are honored to host Lóránt Bódi. He's a cultural historian and editor. He's an honor research associate at the University of Jewish Studies in Budapest and a research fellow at the Foundation pour Mémoire de la Shoah. He's also a former research fellow at the Vienna Byzantine Institute for Holocaust Studies. He worked as assistant research fellow at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences in international research projects. He also did as visiting lecturer at various universities in Budapest. He received his PhD from Eötvös Loránd University, the dissertation on the early memory of the Holocaust in Hungary. Since 2023, he has been working on a postdoctoral project exploring the social and cultural functions of the so-called Holocaust myth. So, I will just mute. So, today, Lóránt will talk about the caricature memory and political culture in post-war Hungary. So please, Lóránt, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introductions, and thank you for having me here. So I'm gonna put out my slideshow, and now I'm not seeing anyone, but I'm hoping all you are there, and I'm really glad that I can give you this lecture, and I can and be here because it's one of my favorite projects that I've been working with for quite a while, and it's also part of my book, which came out this year in April. But in a much larger context. So this time I'm going to speak only about the part of this whole problem, because within my book I'm put more emphasis on the so-called the Jewish humor, Eastern European Jewish humor from the 19th century, and how it had been transformed during and after the Holocaust, during and after the Holocaust. But now I'm going to talk about this post-war years, and only how in these years caricatures and political culture have been related, and how has been the topic of the Holocaust been out through these mediums. So I really wanted to start with this picture, which is really telling, I have to say, because Hungary in the past 3 years, immediately after the war, was in a great devastation, as we know. So it was called the Second Stalingrad. It was like heavy street fights during the war because of the German occupation and the Quisling government, the Nazi-aligned Air Cross government led by Ferenc Szálasi. So it was like a total destructions. As you can see in this picture, the so-called castle in the other part of the Buda Hills, 90% of the buildings had been destroyed, and all of the bridges which are linked the two sides, especially together, are also bombarded. But I'd like to start something else, which is here it is. Like kind of just to get into this Stunde Null feelings. How did it look like Budapest from below, I would say. Because I chose this particular event of the May Day of 1945, which was the first official May Day since decades, because it wasn't possible to hold one during the Horthy era, or in really like in a semi-organized way. It's been restricted because it was a form of political engagement and from the left, and the leftist party has been rejected these times. So this is like a small caption from the diary of Fanny Gyarmati, who was a really famous editor and the wife of Miklós Radnóti, who was one of the most iconic Holocaust poets, I would say, in Hungary, who died in war during forced labor and during a struggle back to Hungary and in Germany, being shot. So in this part of the diary, Fanny Gyarmati is talking really engagingly about how these days look like, especially the 1st of May, which is we're symbolic in many ways. It's not just the political symbolism was important, but not by chance, but the trams started to work in these days. The radio started to operating again, and so many things happened. So it was really like a rejuvenating event in the post-war years. So as you can see, what she wrote here was the streets were filled with jubilation, good cheer. Many people left their homes out of a compulsion and fear. Recruitment was often carried out by bolding warrants with overzealous intimidation, terror. There were so many surprises in the streets. The trams were running again, stepped by friendly conductors and bearing signs that read, "The arrow cross destroyed it. We shall rebuild it." There's another photograph of May Day, which was taken at the Andrássy Street, and here, as you can Andrássy Avenue, as you can see here. So one of the green houses, which was actually the so-called public toilets. There was a drawing of 4 figures behind bars: Mussolini, Hitler, and Japanese Emperor and Salashy. The caption read, "This is where they belong." And everywhere there were countless ideas, the image of immense, anonymous effort striving toward a single goal. So I thought that I'm going to start with these events because it's also symbolized how the public space had been reformed after the war and retaken by the leftist parties during the first May Day and through that until 1990s, and but also it is really important because in this time these figures of the old regime, the ancien regime, the perpetrators of the Second World War, been out and put out in a caricaturistic manners. And this leads us our questions, right? So how the humor in caricature becomes forms of political ritual and public theater in post-war Hungary. This is really important. And what political, commemorative, and emotional function did humor perform in the aftermath of the Holocaust? And how did caricature mediate the experience and memory of the catastrophe in post-war Hungary? In what ways did satiric magazines contribute to both political transformation and the formation of Holocaust memory? So this is going to be overall the question of this lecture. But first, I really want to start with how I ended up with working with this topic, because there's in terms of historiography. So as you can already know that and be known for a while that these post-war years being many times treated as a transitional period, which in the memory of the Holocaust, it wasn't important, and there's been this challenge by David Cesarani, and Hashid Ardiner and many other scholars who kind of questions this statement of the meat of the silence and rediscovering different sources from different languages, especially interesting from Yiddish and other languages, which are not easily accessible, been accessible for a long time. And so they put back and kind of rewrite the memory of the Holocaust, putting together or relating to this post-war years as well. And there's been many research on, I just put the recent ones, but there are so many in the post-war visual cultures, either created in the camps or immediately afterwards. So as Rachel Perry called this visual testimonies, but Agatha Priatrusik and many more are working on this topic, which is really, really, really interesting. And not surprisingly, in Hungary, there was also a bit of a change and challenged the myth of silence. So Máté Zombori, Ferenc Látszó, Daniel Véry, and many others been working, and myself also with this topic. From that, actually, this was my dissertation. So this is my topic of reconsidering again and reinterpreting these early post-war interpretations and social discourses on the Holocaust immediately after the war. I think that one of the most interesting part and aspect, and also the approach of this lecture, is as the humor understanding as a social practice. Because I'm not going to talk this day, I'm not going to analyze or just a little bit of different caricatures, but I'm going to put more emphasis on this social aspects of how had been used the humor during these post-war years. And I think it's really, really, really important to highlight the work of Mary Douglas, who understand the jokes as the country rituals and which invert social norms and hierarchies, and the jokes could create kind of a liminal space, where being the tensions and contradiction could be public and negotiated, and also kind of how the humor and the jokes could reinterpret and redefine the boundaries of a social group. So this is one of the key approach for me here. Also, I put here just some of the humor theories, but that's been a vast literature on humor as social practices. Henri Bergson or Freud, of course, these are the most important figures of this, or lay down the I would say the scholar interpretation of humor, jokes, and laughter, which are really, really important. But on the other hand, there's also an interesting approach by Ernst Chris and Ernst Gombrich, who wrote together a book which actually hasn't been published as a book, but some parts been published yet, and it's about how it's about caricatures and the history of caricatures, and how the caricatures is coming from the 17th century Italian art, and how it had been changed something as a political tool, especially in the First World War, obviously even before that, but they're saying and put really big emphasis on the change of the First World War, and how had been the atrocity propaganda, and how this new way of propagating something against of the enemies during the First World War been totally changed the landscape of how had been usually talking about caricature. And still, I think it's important that, as Chris saying, that's how still the caricature is a kind of an archaic cultural residue, and how replaced the image used in magic, quote unquote. So it's this origin of and the power of the caricatures. It's where it's coming from. It's I think it's nicely put in this context. The other another important approach for this question or this topic is how political theater works in the past 30 years as part of coming to terms of the past. And I'm obviously not going to talk about all of these different stages, which I would call like stages. So because the coming terms to the past and put on trial of the perpetrators and people responsible for the war, of course, and all the others, and the persecution of the Hungarian Jewry and so many things had been done in many levels. So it was not just in the first stages I put here. Most obvious stage is the tribunals and transitional justice. So there being like these people's tribunals and special committees pursuing accountability for crimes and collaboration, and which were really this one and the main cases was at the Academy of Music in Budapest, but all the others all around in Hungary, they were put in theaters and important like social spaces, because it was obvious that it should be done in front of the people. And so this aspect of it was part of this, as I called it, and use this term of political theater, it was part of it. And also, on the other hand, and secondly, as we have been already seen, the streets in the urban space being also part of this political theater, how it been captured and re-engaged by political actors as a form of political activity. It's just started in the 1st of May, but there were obviously many other demonstrations. So it was, these past 3 years was all about demonstrations and legitimizing this mass political movement through capturing the social space, which were literally like the spaces of the streets and the streets of the cities and so many things. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, not the first one. And obviously, the third one is the press and publicity, which all the trees are interrelated, obviously. How and in this third one, so how the publicity reflected on the for example, of the people's tribunals, which have been heavily followed by the newspapers, many caricatures being produced on that, and they were all around. It was really an important stuff for delegitimizing the former and purifying through that the society, and have like a new start, obviously led by the communist and the left parties. Sorry. So just a little bit of a bigger context of how Hungary looked like after the Second World War, which was like a huge catastrophe in terms of the Hungarian population. So like around 1 million people died, and like 79% of the Hungarian Jewish population died during the Holocaust, during the Second World War, according to the World Jewish Congress. in many different forms, obviously. But already before the war, before the end of the war, the political change has already been happening in 1944. Sorry, I have to admit some. Okay. So in the end of 1944, the new government being formed in 21st of December, led by a former military person, Miklos Bieldanowski. This was the national government, so-called. And in early 1945, the new government signed a lot of and initiated a lot of major reforms. Immediately, the People's Court being established in 1945, and many more things. This time was being called the coalition period, or years of transition, and mostly being optimized by the process of Sovietization. However, as we can refer back to this historiographical transition of the concept of the myth of the change of the myth of silence. It was rather important in the history of the post-war years in Hungary, because most of the historiography being kind of neglected this period as part of this whole of the Sovietization as a transit period, which are not important to look into scholarly, which I'm not agree with. So obviously, so the first stage is the political is the urban space, and here it's another example of from the 1st of May 1945, May Day, because I put it here, and I will show 2-3 other pictures, because they were quite prevalent, that the old perpetrators, like here Hitler and 2 other it's Imre Helyes and Béla Imredi, who was the prime minister, and one of the most fervent supporter of the first Jewish law in 1939, in 1938. So it was really important in this regard, putting here. So using these puppets was quite extraordinary, because it never happened again in 1946 or any other like May Days or other political parades. So in this sense, it was like kind of an interim occasion for this. But I think it's really important to highlight that this new regime, how engaged and endorsed political participation by occupying the urban spaces, which obviously led to political violence as well, and the mobilization of anti-Semitism. So it was quite it's really strongly connected to this new type of politicization of the urban space. And but on the other hand, as you can see here, the reconing and this the reconing with the defeated regime been in many different practices had been used. So this is like the social practices, like the tribunals and political practices, but also these are like part of the cultural practices, the political cultural practices of reconing with the past, and symbolically give justice against these people. It's interesting to say that most of the from this period being organized by the Social Democrat Party and the Communist Party, and the delegates from the Social Democrat Party were two highly qualified artists and Holocaust survivors, Andrea Balint and Andrew Schubert. Both are coming from the avant-garde Munka circle, and they've been engaged of creating the designs of the parade. That was actually the first and the last time, but when they've been occupied with that, nothing more. Here also like really disturbing pictures because like people like these figures of the Nyilás, the arrow cross perpetrator being hanged, also Szálasi. So this was also part of this, I would say, in using the term of Michael Bakhtin, so this carnivalization of the May Day, which is really kind of an inherent part of these events. And interestingly, these hangings and this giving like a symbolic social justice against the perpetrators been all around. So like Victory Days in the US or in Great Britain, but also interestingly part of the Purim rituals. And there are many examples from especially from this Landsberg DP camp from this Postwar years, where like this Hitler puppet being hanged. And there is and part of the ritual of Purim and Purim Spiel. And there's another picture from Buchenwald, which also symbolizing and doing the same practices. Let's jump into a bit more into the culture context of post-war humor, because and it's a much bigger context, and I'm not going to talk about how political humor being connected to Jewish humor from the 19th century through the Hort era as well, and the Holocaust, and ended up here. But I really want to say that it's a really interesting thing that still, despite the devastating loss of the Holocaust, because of the largely of the Jews of Budapest being survived, kind of this Jewish urban culture had been also survived. Especially interesting to talk about humor magazines or satirical magazines, but there've been a lot of books like joke collections like this by Palaszty Stella, Adorján Stella and Palaszty László, been also survivor of the Holocaust. And it's called the Laughing on Hitler's Anti-Fascist Jokes and Anecdotes, a collection of anti-fascist jokes and anecdotes. And there's another really important novel, I would say, autobiographical novel by Pál Királyhegyi, who was a really famous humorist from the interwar period. And he wrote actually his own the story of his deportation, but it really like in a satirical, self-ironical manner. And there are being like 3-4 other books which are also really relevant from this era. So it was not like it was really, I would say, like really part of this political humor culture of the post-war years. And let's turn back into the caricatures, graphic artists, because I would like to use these people as kind of case studies, because they are representing different kind of strategies towards how to deal with the Holocaust and how to represent the Holocaust. Because first I have to say that among the caricaturists, the humorists, all these so there were many like Holocaust survivors in this field working also through the interwar period, but during the occupation as well, which was really interesting. There has been some outlets which has been published during that time as well, and these were like in many ways like heavily anti-Semitic and really important to how to fight through caricatures and humor against anti-Semitism and fascism in this sense. And I highlight here like three stories, three persons, story of three persons. So one is like Peter Adler, who was I think one of the most famous artists who been really engaged with caricatures after the war, but already in the interwar period. And actually, he left Hungary after the post-war years and stayed in South American, being a quite well-known graphic artist as well there. Another one is Tibor Kajan, whose caricatures I will show here later on, who actually started his career during these post-war years. And he was also a forced laborer, a survivor, and later on he became kind of the figure of the caricaturist in Hungary in the socialist in the state socialist era. But luckily he lived a really long life. So in after the political transition, he was really active as well. And the third one is Felix Kaschowitz, who didn't create a lot of arts regarding the Holocaust. So he in this sense, he was he kind of an exemption from these. But I will show you something in the end, which is really interesting in this sense. So Peter Adler's was a really famous artist already during the interwar period. And he was the first designer of the so-called Ludašmati, the satirical press, which was the biggest magazine from the post-war years, led by the Communist Party. And he was the chief designer of the first issues. On the other hand, at the same time, he made drawings to the Képesfigyelő was the biggest tabloid magazine of the post-war years on the left, and he was heavily engaged and occupied with the topic of the perpetrators and the tribunals, the people's tribunals. So most of his drawings in the press are around this topic. But in 1946, he also published a graphic album, which is 1944, so the occupation of the German occupation. And it's a really interesting album with around 20 drawings using like really strong biblical references, as you can see in the first page. But he was also put on drawings on the arriving at the concentration camps and lots of other things during the Holocaust. So he literally like showed the different horrific events during the Holocaust, not just the mass deportations, but also how it was possible to live in hiding and that sort of things in Budapest and the ghetto life. Quite literally like a big panel of the Hungarian Holocaust. So these are the satirical presses which came out. Actually, there were like four, but these are the three most important press magazines of this era. The Ludas was the biggest. It's like hundreds of thousands copies being sold. The second biggest was the so-called the Pesti, I'm so sorry, which is linked to the Social Democratic Party, and the smallest one was the so-called Szabadság, which was affiliated with the Independent Smallholders Party. It's really interesting that most of these magazines really look like the same, because the artists, the graphic artists were working for all of them at the same time. Of course, not all of them, but some part of them working for the same time. So the style of these magazines were not really different, but obviously how they dealt with the different everyday topics, political topics, it's been heavily could be heavily differentiated. So Lóránt was politically more engaged and being really used for in political campaigns against other parties. Szabadság was also really politically engaged, but Pesti, for example, it was less political in this terms. And Lóránt was also really engaged with the topic of the war criminals. So sorry. This is one of the cover of Lóránt, which you can see the so-called main perpetrators of the Second World War. There were many caricatures, jokes on these people, especially Miklos Horthy, the leader of Hungary. At the same time, also Ferenc Szálasi being mentioned many times. Imre Béla Imrédi, László Endre, who I'm going to talk about a little bit. So in the sense that the coming to terms of the past, it was really part of the agenda of the magazine and of the weekly, because it was a weekly journal magazine, and yes. So and I'm jumping into another important topic of here. So it's the how being the perpetrators creating how the suffering of the Hungarian Jewry being depicted, which was like also really important to say, because part of the People's Tribunal occasions and events, time to time, when the chief perpetrators, especially, for example, Endre László, came into trial, it's been heavily followed by Lóránt. So there are many caricatures and closely related to the Holocaust, to the deportation, to the mass atrocities against the Hungarian Jews, and these are not just two cases, but there has been many more in this time, and obviously it's all started from the arriving back to Hungary, because these chief perpetrators, most of them fled Hungary and gave back quote unquote back by the U.S. authorities or the Soviet authorities, but mostly the Americans. And so Endre László was one of the key figure of the deportations, and the iconography of the iconographic depiction of him was like putting into chains. So, and this is like a typical depiction of him and representing the new regime of ending the reign of him, and give him a trial at the same time. And here's another caricature of him, which is also linked to. So this picture on the left is also from Képes figyelő. It's the time, it's the arrival at the so-called sorry, just how is this in English? It's the okay, so this was the headquarter of the Aerocross party. It's called the Andrássy út 60 now. It's the so-called Museum of Terror, and it's been overtaken by the communist authorities. And here on the left next to László Endre was the chief inspector of the political police, Péter Gábor, capturing him, quote unquote, when he was coming out from the police car. And this picture of this iconography had been like replaced in this, not replaced, but redone in this caricature, which is really strong in the sense that how violence had been depicted here against a seemingly women victim of cutting her hair, which was like kind of a symbolic violence, but also this was, there are like a lot of interesting and important accounts on this on this type of violence against women in the camps and arriving into the camps. So there's a big literature on this. And what's in this caption, it's like not a hair on his head is out of place, which is not, sorry, it's not the best translation, but it says basically that no harm is gonna take him, which is kind of but not a real quote of him at the tribunal. So I tried to search whether he actually said it at the People's Tribunal, but it didn't happen, obviously. But it's just the paraphrase of what he had said, because László Endre denied many of the accusations and his responsibility to the deportation, and it was quite a huge scandal, obviously, at the tribunal. Yes. And I really want to stop with this last slide, which is I don't know, you're familiar with this or not. This is so it's this postcard made by Felix Karsowitz, and it's been out at the space, part of the remembering of the Holocaust on the International Women's Day in 2020 by the American astronaut, and brought out to this space, which is kind of beautiful. So the story of this postcard is, it's been done by Felix Karsowitz in Russia where he was with forced labor as a forced laborer, and he never done actually any kind of sort of art related to the Holocaust or his own experiences, but he's done this this beautiful postcard, which depicting and says that he sent to his son, saying that I mean, so this is the text there, that you're watching the same same stars as I'm watching now. So so thank you so much. I'm gonna stop now. I think we are a bit out of time. Sorry, it was hard to.
No, we have time. If you would like to say.
No. I'm gonna stop here. So if you have any questions, yeah. So thank you so much.
So thank you, Lóránt, for this talk. And now I will open the floor for questions and comments. So maybe I will start with the first one. So my question is, how was the reception of these cartoons, sometimes provocative cartoons?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There hasn't been many on the caricatures, but more on the on jokes, which I haven't showed here, but there were like massive criticism on these Postwar humor, in the sense that saying that it's not. They were saying that it's not legitimate to ridicule these people through humor, because it's a more important and more serious issue than this. But I haven't found any criticism towards the caricatures.
I see. Any other questions? And regarding first press photographs, what is the source? The Fortepan?
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, could you repeat it?
In the beginning of the lecture, there was some press photographs. What was the source? Because it was Fortepan, or
yeah. Sorry, the broken bridge, right? So
yes.
yeah. It's I think it's from Fortepan. Yeah.
Okay.
But there were many others.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there are a lot of. I want to say there were a lot of pictures on the devastated Budapest.
Yes.
It isn't heavily covered.
Indeed. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
מחמאה הכי גדולה שיכולה להיות הרצאה, הכי מדהימה ששמעתי השנה.
Maybe
I say it in English. I have to give you a big compliment, because it's one of the lectures that I have heard this year, one of the best. Because I'm also dealing with memory of Holocaust in Israel, especially of people that survive in art. They are making in art artwork, and it was very, very interesting, your lecture.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nili. Okay.
A question.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, you mentioned theater and cabaret. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Like, were there performances, especially cabaret type performances, that also use the similar kind of humor in a immediately post-war, post-Holocaust time, to ridicule or to accuse, or, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting case. I have to say, and this is a bigger context, that I would say that there were like many restrictions during the interwar period against cabaret, but against caricatures and humor magazines and satirical magazines and so forth. And actually, at least till the German occupation, and a little bit after that, in an interim period in October and November, there were like some spots where like really critical voices had been out in cabaret, in satirical presence, so on and so on. But on the other hand, most of the cabaret artists, either purged or not returned to Hungary. So the former really strong urban life in this sense kind of disappeared after the war. So it hadn't been restored in this sense. So when I was talking about political theater, I use this term as not so as a social practice, not per se the theater as such, but how politics being theaterized. That was more of my approach. But on the other hand, I have to say that a lot of artists, writers, humorists, cabaret artists, been continuing these his and her oeuvres in the post-war years and reflecting on their own experience during the Holocaust. So what I'm saying is that this satirical, self-ironical type of humor being out, and this is not surprising, but surprising in the sense that if you compare to the humor culture of neighboring countries, it's been a bit different because somehow the Jewish this urban culture survived the war, and anti-fascism, which was quite an important political ideology and form of a political culture, been invested in many of these countries, in Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, or especially obviously in Germany. So somehow I think and this is obviously just a hypothesis, so I haven't done like a real big comparative research, but my hypothesis is that in this sense, this couple of years been a bit unique in posterior Europe, in the sense that how strongly been reflected the devastating, catastrophic years in this sphere of the culture. Sorry, it was a bit yeah.
Thank you. And I have one more question. I understand you didn't take in your research also the Hungarian diaspora, meaning especially Jews not living anymore in Hungary, but living in Israel and still writing or creating caricatures and like printing things in Hungarian.
Yes,
that's one example, and the other, like Hungarian-speaking Jews, for instance, in Yugoslavia that you mentioned, in Vojvodina, that also were quite active in that immediately after the Holocaust, and among them were also caricaturers and humorists. So you didn't deal with that field?
I really wanted to do it, but I haven't done it yet. So this is my regret, or not regret, but I really want to extend the research towards the diaspora. Absolutely, the influence not only in obviously first in Israel, but outside of Hungary, in the US and Great Britain, because there are some, I would say, like threads of artists who immigrated there or made the aliyah to Israel. So
yeah, and then there are newspapers and things that were still published and written in Hungarian.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, and thank you, Lóránt, for this talk. And
so
I hope that we can read your book one day here in Israel. And I will invite you for next week, the last lecture of the semester by Barbara Gerlin about provenance research and archival silence in Eastern Europe. So Wednesday, 4 o'clock in Israeli time. So thank you and goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and have a nice.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.